presenter. I want to remind everyone that we're being recorded and the system isn't as great as we might like. So when you speak, please speak loudly and clearly so you can be recorded where others can hear and make out what you're saying. The motion is to be made. The speaker or the maker of the motion and the seconder needs to state their first name or need to state their name first so there's a clear recording of this. We need to maintain a quorum of 4 members in the room. If we have fewer than 4 for any reason, the way we conduct our meetings changes. If you leave early, or even if you have to leave for a bio break, if we fail to have the requisite quorum, the minutes will have to take note. We can continue to have presentations, but no votes. The goal of our meeting is to conclude our business in 2 hours, but if we need to extend, this will only occur with the consent of the body. If we run out of time, some items may need to be deferred to a future meeting. Please stay focused on our real purpose to oversee the bond funds and the bond projects. Everything else is just icing on the cake. 2 of my responsibilities at these meetings include keeping one of my eyes on the agenda, all the while keeping the other eye on the clock to do my best to get as much of our work completed and still get us out of here in 2 hours. As of January 1, legislation went into effect with regards to remote participation at Brown Act meetings. Last month, I shared a reprint, or a couple months ago, I shared a reprint from School and College Legal Service of California, explaining how this might affect us. Ms. Payne has also provided similar information, but there appears to be contradictions. As I will be submitting a series of specific questions to Ms. Payne that she can provide to the district's legal team, where I've asked for a written response from someone who has actually passed the bar. In the meantime, I will be liberal in my handling of remote participation. Better to be inclusive rather than exclusive. And that means that any of our CBOC members that are participating remotely, I need to make sure that when I have the roll call that you say something verbally so that on the Zoom meeting, it indicates that you are in attendance. And if you have to leave early, please make sure that we notice that at the same time because we have to record that in our minutes. Okay? And because we are short a secretary until we can have elections, this will be discussed a little bit later. But in the meantime, if there's no objection, I will continue to draft the minutes for this meeting. Is that okay with the rest of the body?
No objection.
I didn't think so. I'd be fighting you on that one. Thank you very much. We will go straight to the roll call. And we have myself, I am here. Brendan Havenar-Doughton.
Here.
Andrew Butt.
Here.
Giamma. She said that she would be participating remotely, but we hopefully that she will show up. Andrea London, let me know that she will not be able to participate. Tasha Johnson. Not here. Lynn Johnson. We saw your phone number, Lynn.
Lynn is on mine. Are you able to unmute, Lynn?
Well, we're seeing her phone number for the, again.
Yes, I'm here.
You take a liberal.
I'm here.
You're here, Lynn?
Yes.
Okay, good enough. I'm gonna be easy on this one. All right. We'll go next to item D, the approval of the minutes. Approval of the agenda. My apologies. Not speaking well tonight, obviously. Okay, and to discuss a consent calendar item, it must be removed from the agenda. We don't have to do this at this time. We'll do it when that item comes up. Is there any problem with accepting the agenda as presented?
Nope.
Okay. We'll go on to item E, public comments for items not on the agenda. Items already on the agenda may not be spoken on in this section. Speakers must fill out a speaker form with the appropriate agenda item listed. If speaking remotely, the speaker must raise their hand. Speakers will be allowed 3 minutes. Do we have any public speakers?
Not at this time.
Okay. Moving right along. Let's get in on to the bond program project status and financial reports.
Wonderful. Good evening. Ellen Mejia Hooper here once again for our May report. Our project status update continues to show our various bond projects and where they are in the design and construction process. We have the Stige campus rebuild, where we are in design documents. Kennedy High School modernization, we have several phases here. With the building pad being bid currently for the new construction of phase one. Phase one drawings are in construction and documents, getting ready for DSA submittal. And or we just completed our 50% page turn and design development for our phase 2 and 3, which are modernization phases. At Richmond High, for the modernization project, we have a utility make ready package, which is currently in DSA. Construction documents is where we are for our phase 1. We'll be submitting to DSA the phase 1 documents this month. And design documents for phases 2 and 3, which are again the modernization of the remaining buildings beyond the new construction. For Kennedy's critical needs, we have closeout of the admin relocation project, and we are gearing up to begin the demolition of the 100, 200, and 500 building. For construction, we have our Lake campus rebuild, where our increment 2 is in construction. Pinole Valley High School, we have a DSA appointment to submit the drawings for that for DSA review. And at Shannon, we are in construction and have additional slides describing where we are there. So Lake campus rebuild, things are moving along. So in the foreground, we have the cafeteria building, which has its base stucco coat on there. You can see we're to the final color coat on the Kinder building, which is in the background of the image. And in the Kinder building inside, the drywall has been taped and textured and primed. We have casework delivery, and the ceiling grid has been installed since last month. So you can see last month, we were still just at the tape section of drywall. And so we're moving on there. Lake for the outside of the Kinder building, you can see we have the colored stucco up, and the steel for the covered walkways have been primed. They're also framing the edge of the formwork to be able to set the trench drain, which you can see behind here. And that's the edge of our concrete walkway. There's blacktop in the middle here, and this will become the kindergarten play area once it's complete. At the cafeteria building, our butterfly canopy, I was excited because this is a better image, Dawn. I know last month you were wondering why we call it a butterfly canopy. Well, here we go. We've got the butterfly shape taking form, which was harder to see last month when we only had the steel up and I had not a great angle to show. But when I was out there, I'm like, no, look at that. There it is. So this is our outdoor dining area and central plaza of the campus, which is going to be super exciting. It's great to see the roof on. They will continue to fill this in. It'll be eventually stuccoed. In the cafeteria behind, again, you see the stucco base coats applied.
Sorry, what are we going to see on the underside of the covering?
This will be stuccoed, so
Okay.
it'll be flat.
All right.
And this little black box here, when I was out there this week, there's more of them, but there's lighting. So there's recessed lighting in the so you'll see the lighting, and then you'll also see this, and it's also sprinklered. So
How wide is that, like 30 feet?
At least, yeah. So it's a nice size space outside, and it rolls right into the roll-up doors. So we got a little indoor-outdoor ability. These right here are the roll-up doors on the side of the building. So, it'll be a really fun central plaza.
So I thought we were lucky with Lake that we actually have room to build things. So many of the other campuses, Stage is the primary, when the only place to build is up, if you want to add things on there, but this one's got a lot of space. It may not have as much playfield as you once did, but at least we're not fighting the constraints of the physical dimensions.
Yeah, it does have a more roomy site. It is still a little oddly shaped in how we had to fit phase one in where we had the open area. Really affected the design of how that came together. Not that we didn't accomplish it, but it definitely influenced how it works. So the main street is what we call the center spine that separates between the classroom and the admin, and it will go right through the middle of this and along the front of the multipurpose room to get you out to the playground. There's a little bit of a hike out to the playground, but that's good because we want the kids to get get a lot of their energy out. And so they have to at least progress from one place to the other.
We used to run into problems at some of our high schools with the oddly shaped opportunities. That football fields and well, tracks in particular that did not quite conform to the standards. El Cerrito High School was a good example of that. It was,
Yes, El Cerrito is a tough site on the stadium, for sure. It's definitely an alternative design. Okay, moving on inside. So everybody wants to go inside the cafeteria, right? And so this is what the inside of the cafeteria, you can see the proscenium is taking shape around the stage area. This is the stage behind. We do have exposed glue lamps that are within the space before the acoustic deck ceiling. Fire sprinklers are in, working on finishing up the sheetrock. So that's where we are with the inside of the cafeteria. Shannon is another cafeteria. So at Shannon, we're kind of in the same place, very similar. So we've got the undercoat of stucco up. And the inside, we have a little bit different ceiling detailing here where eventually this will be drywalled. And then we will also have acoustic paneling applied to that. But so right now you just see the insulation up. We do have exposed glue lamps here as well. You can see the sheetrock isn't quite as far along in this one as it is in the lake. But we do have the penetrations and ductwork framed over the kitchen space and coming through. So that's what these holes are. They will be eventually the air ducts and returns for our HVAC system. In the kitchen and speed line area, last month we were just installing the insulation in the walls and roof or ceiling. We now have all of the sheetrock up and some of the mechanical ducting, and you can see here, as well as the fire sprinklers. So this is looking from the speed line out into the dining area. One of the things we have in this design, as well as the lake, is a visual connection between the two. At Michelle Obama, we weren't able to accomplish that, but it makes this space feel much more roomy than it does when it's just solid walls.
Ellen? So are both cafeterias all electric?
Yes.
Cool.
Kennedy, critical needs, we have a notice of completion. Yay. So that's on the board agenda for Wednesday for our admin relocation project. So that has finished up and is allowing us to move straight into 1.1.
I'm sorry. I didn't quite understand. What part is being brought before the board?
A notice of completion.
Oh, right. Never mind. Thank you.
And then we will also have an amendment to the 1.1 to add 1.2. We made it out of DSA faster than we originally anticipated. So we are going to be able to combine the construction of those two phases together. One's a DSA package, one's not, but the key of being able to do that is that some of our utility lines are going to be able to be run this summer, which is exciting because anytime we get to do utility lines when people are not in session is so much less stressful.
You seem to be easily excited about some of these things.
I mean, otherwise, why would I show up every day, Don? This is not an easy job. So if I wasn't excited about it, then I wouldn't be here. Prestige, plus that's a huge deal. I am so stoked to start digging over at Kennedy and to take some buildings down. I know that the community's been waiting a really long time and much longer than I have, but I've been working on this for some time now, and I feel like I'm entitled to a little bit of excitement.
Are you going to man one of the 16-pound sledgehammers yourself?
I'm not allowed to do that. I would break some union and other laws if I did such, but I will be around I will have my hard hat on and all of my proper PPE, but I will be there for at least some of the
You
process.
don't know what you're missing out on.
I will not miss out. I rarely miss out. We had a new superintendent start at Shannon, and they were like, "You want to go on the roof?" And I'm like, "Absolutely, I'm going on the roof. You can't keep me off of it." Okay, so Stige Elementary School rebuild. We have a community meeting coming up on May 15th, this Thursday, at 6:30. So that will review both the demolition process as well as we have some information about color schemes and themes for input. We'll show the update of the site plan and some other good stuff. So playground structure selection. So fun things happening at the upcoming community meeting. That is at Booker T. Anderson Community Center. We did just have a meeting with our, these will also be shown at the community meeting. We had a meeting to cover the classroom design with the teachers, as well as a parent meeting last week. So we had a really fun seminar with the students at recess. We went to all 3 grade level recesses and had them do an exercise to help pick the design of the play structures, as well as the playground striping. So that was a lot of fun. And we just recently went to the board for the notice of exemption for the CEQA process. So
Informing them or asking their permission?
to be able to file.
Okay.
So we're in the 30-day period right now for that. Kennedy High School modernization. As I was saying in the intro, we have 3 different phases to our phase 1, which is our new construction. We are moving folks out of the 500 building as soon as school is done so that we can work on the demolition. So we're working on the procurement for the movers. We're bidding the 1.2 and 1.3. We had a good pre-application meeting with DSA. We did a great page turn with our M&O department, which reviews the different systems and things that are in the design to make sure that they understand what's being designed and are have input in that process and can maintain it afterwards. And phase 2, we're doing a few focus group meetings to clean up the design development documents to move that forward. So lots going on. Richmond High, kind of similar pieces. We did have the CEQA there as well. We have what we call the utility make ready package. While we don't need to demo any buildings, we do need to reconnect a lot of the utilities before we're able to start construction to make sure that they're out of the way of the new building's footprint. So that currently is in DSA, and the last I checked the tracker, we were at 85% review. So we're hoping that's going to come out soonish. And we're actively advertising the bid for that work so that it can begin this summer. Phase 1, new classroom building, DSA submission is scheduled for May 19th. The Division of State Architect has you create an appointment to be able to turn in your drawings. and you have to make that appointment 6 weeks in advance. So we know when it's due. So May 19th is our day. And that completes the presentation. We of course have our project status reports as well as our newsletters as part of the packet.
On the newsletters,
Yes.
I love the information, don't get me wrong. This formatting, too many of them extend past a single page, printable page,
Right.
by just a little, an inch and a quarter. Or you get a blank page, like that one. I'm sorry, after I put the agenda packet together, I noticed that I'm not starting from scratch.
Right.
But just thinking of me, I'm looking at, on page 35, for instance. I mean, you got some wasted space up there at the top.
Yeah, the hard part about the SMORE application has a lot of wonderful things about it. And when the communications department originally did their survey to try to figure out what's the best way to communicate with our parents, a few things that we discovered was that our parents really like using their cell phones to be able to access the information, which is not a shocker, right? I think a lot of us do that. And so one of the criteria that was used to select a newsletter application was they wanted one that automatically reformatted depending on what platform you were looking at the information on. So the hard part is that when it's an electronic based format, the good news is that it automatically adjusts depending on which device you're looking at it. The other good news is that it has an ability to translate. So SMORE can be accessed in either English or Spanish, depending on how you're utilizing it. But the drawback to that is that it's not nearly as good as a print newsletter. And so it's one of those things, I can't reformat the size of the top banner that is built into the system. So we can print it as a picture instead of a PDF, and that sometimes allows a little bit better page formatting, but it does make it challenging to do a print version.
I'm just gonna bet that there's one person in the district other than me that cares about printing it out and archiving it. But that means you got another 268,000 people that don't give a dang. So I just got outvoted.
Well, I had a quick question about the CEQA exemption. Is that a categorical exemption or what is that? Can you talk
Yes.
a little bit more about? Yeah.
It is a categorical exemption, and it really is based on there's an existing school site there, and we're not increasing the capacity or the number of classrooms that are part of the new design from the old design. So it's that we're not really changing the use of the space.
Is that typical for most of your projects?
It is.
But there's not usually, has there ever been a project that doesn't qualify for that categorical exemption?
Before my time, but yeah, we've been through a full
Maybe
process before.
just when you're really expanding the footprint.
Or when you're using a site that wasn't used for a school site. So the one that comes to mind is the Korematsu project.
Yes, Hercules Middle High School is a good example too. That was brand new.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, we have empty,
Yeah.
vacant lot.
So like change of use.
That was around 1999 for that.
Yeah.
Korematsu was much later, but yeah. So, I'm ignorant about this. It can say categorical. What does that actually mean? It sounds like it's an actual designation, right?
It is a designation, so it's paperwork that we file with the county and it's posted up on our school sites for 30 days. It basically means that we aren't required to do a full environmental impact review because there are certain categories that you can apply for an exemption based on because those different categories criteria. And one of them is, talks about a school site that doesn't increase capacity. And so though that is, a, by regulation, a authorized exemption, but you have to go through the process of filing that, paperwork to notice that you're doing an exemption.
Just so people are aware, I'm just seeing that trustee Smith Folds and trustee Alana have joined us, which is good. Thank you. Go ahead.
Financial?
The other thing I would just share, if you wanted to take a deeper dive, in particular for those two projects, and we do go to the board making a recommendation that they approve doing a notice of exemption. There's a resolution that supports that identifies all of the kind of prescriptive, categorical exemptions that are the basis for our recommendation, and that's what ultimately gets filed. And so I can print those for you tonight.
Is that all in the packet?
It's included with the item. So there's a lot of detail in there that kind of describes that analysis that was done that's very project specific. So tonight for financial reports, we're going to start at the end. So I'm going to ask that you go to page 47. We're going to start with the AP checklist, and then we're going to work our way back to the program. So one of the ways that I think about it is instead of starting at 10,000 feet, we're going to start in the weeds. So ultimately what the AP checklist identifies is it identifies every expenditure that was made within the month. And so as we look at this report, we can see essentially this is a list of the checks that were issued, and we see the information here that identifies the vendor, how we paid for it, and a description of what it is and the amount. Next page.
Yeah.
So it's separated by site, and then when we get to the bottom, there's central cost. Next page. So on 49, we get this summary table that's listed here. So part of what this identifies for us is it identifies the AP check total. So the value of the checks that were issued out was 2.9 million. Typically, we'll see a number of these other items here, but on this particular month's report, there are a lot more items of higher value. And so I really wanted to take some time in tonight's report to talk about those more. So the first two items that we see after the checks are essentially the retention. And so there's two ways that that's handled, right? So if the simple way to say is if the contractor bills you $100, you're going to pay them 95 and you're going to hold 5. And that's by public contract code. But you can do one of two things with that retention. Either it's district held or it's held in escrow at a bank. And so that's essentially the difference between the top two items. So some contractors elect for the district to hold, some elect to set up a third-party escrow account so that the money can make money.
Excuse me, the contractor gets to make that decision?
Yes, that is an option available to them.
Okay.
So
They get the interest.
they get the interest, yeah. And since it's held in escrow, right, it's one of those things where both parties, they can't have access to those funds without our authorization. It's a three-party agreement. The next item that's listed here that you don't see very often, but can happen from time to time, is we did have a voided check. And so there was a check that was issued. It was issued to the wrong remit. Essentially what that means is sometimes a vendor will have a change in address. And so they'll have a different remit, which is the address that prints on the check. And so we had to void the check that was issued. There was an issue with the financial system as it printed, and so we voided the check and then reissued it with the correct remit, correct address. The next item listed here, and so you can see there that detail, that was a check for BSK, and so we want to provide that full record there. The next item that's listed is the payroll. And so payroll is for staff that are working directly on bond-funded projects that meet the requirements of the Attorney General's kind of outline of what is an allowable expense. And so you see that there. And then the last one is the manual journal entry. And usually what we see in the manual journal entry is just a single line, which is that top line, which is any time card adjustment that's made based on the FTE, right? So we all have an FTE, and that's basically a guess of how much of our time we'll spend on the bond program. We're all required to keep timesheets that reflect how we actually spend our time. Sometimes something happens that's unexpected. And then, so that's our actual, and then we go back and do a reconciliation between what was planned and what was actual, and either refund, right, or charge the bond accordingly. So that's what the first line is. The next couple of lines really date back to ultimately the presentation to the board back in December. So part of the strategy for the funding for the Siege project was to use supplemental facility funds that are also restricted and have boundaries for use to supplement some of the funding for projects that were completely funded with bond. So a good example, and the first one we see there is Lake. So Lake was completely funded with the bond program. Lake's facilities and some of the facilities that will be opening up here in the fall include some TK spaces, transitional kindergarten. And so transitional kindergarten spaces are eligible for the use of developer fees, which is an extremely restrictive funding source, really for a nexus for growth. And so what you see here is some of the expenses for TK, which we vetted with our school facility consultants experts kind of on making sure that we were making the appropriate determination of value and then keeping everything for future audit. You can see then those TK expenses have moved to Fund 25, and you can see that's a large dollar value there. There's some smaller amounts that were moved to other eligible facility funding sources. And then the other big one that you see there is for Hercules Middle and High School. And that's because at Hercules, we replaced portable buildings, portable science labs with the permanent construction. So also allowable. And as outlined in the board's approved school justification needs assessment report. And so these were eligible bond expenditures that have already occurred, and we are transferring that expense out of the bond program into those other restricted facility funds. And so that's what you see reflected here. There's also some small items for items that were moved. One of them you can see, I want to make sure that we're being very transparent about every bond dollar spent. You can see there's just shy of $1,500. It says legal fee transferred from IT to bond. This was associated with bringing the internet that is district managed to the Lake project. And so you can see that's a small expense, but directly tied to that project. The last one that's a big number that you see here, the 1.3 million. And so this essentially was an unbudgeted expense. So this was the cost of issuance for the new bond, the new money sale that we did in October, November of last year, as well as the refunding. So the best way that I could explain it is very similar to how if you were going to refinance your house, that's essentially what a refunding is. Very similarly, there's a cost to doing that transaction. And so in accordance with statute, the full details supporting the cost of issuance has to be provided to the board, and that was presented, I think, in December of last year. But that expense hit the bond program and was not budgeted. And so that is being corrected here. And so I just really wanted to be transparent about all of the transactions that are reflected. And you can always go to the AP checklist to get that line by line transactional data. This ultimately then rolls up into our larger report. So now if we could scroll back to the beginning of our financial reports, we'll find ourselves on page 40 at the beginning of report 13. And so the first page of report 13, this is really our cover page. And this is where we can see that our projected cash balance at June of 2029 is still 4.1. And scrolling down just a little bit, we see that we have some state grants out in the future. As we scroll through these pages, this is basically, this is all of the detail that supports the numbers that are rolled up on that cover sheet. Not much changes with this data. A lot of it is pretty static, and that really leads us to the tremendous value of the Report 13 variance, which is on page 44. And that's what identifies the change, the monthly change from March to April. And so this is another place where we try to be really transparent in identifying any of the shifts that transpired over the month for each one of those overall items. So we can see for adjusted cash balance, there was a variance of 9 million. And then the detail associated with that is then represented there in the notes, which corresponds to the very specific detail that we just reviewed in the AP checklist. But there are a couple things on here that I also wanted to provide some explanation for, and we find those in the less expenses to date, as well as the projected cash balance. And essentially what you'll see here is it says prior year doubled expense adjustment. So our bond budgets, right? Our bond project budgets, they're multi-year. Our projects are multi-year. And so our contracts are multi-year too. As a school district, we need to report everything by fiscal year, right? So July 1 to June 30. And that can create some challenges. There's a big year-end process. So what can happen is with a multi-year budget and multi-year contracts, if the expense is booked in 2 different fiscal years, it's something that you have to look out for, and it's something that has to be cleaned up. And so as part of the reconciliation being done to prepare for the year-end process, there were some prior year double expenses. So it existed in 2 different fiscal years that have been adjusted. Sinja has identified these and provided the backup to support it. And so essentially this is just a internal reconciliation and cleaning the books as we prepare for year end. But again, all of that is what ultimately makes up the numbers that are being presented here. And we wanted to be really transparent about kind of cumulatively what these variances represent so that you have that full detail. And so that kind of leads us to our last report, which is on 45. And so report 13's whole program, and we're looking all the way forward to 2029. Report 2 brings us back to present, and it says, this is the detail by site. And then all of these reports connect one to the other in terms of their data. But I really appreciate you giving me a little bit of extra time to really walk through the AP checklist tonight and be really transparent about those changes.
Your reports are why we are here. You've got all the time in the world.
Thank you.
Everything else is our problem.
Well, and one of the things that I want to do is just appreciate the chair for being so patient. So we did not meet the deadline again on our financial reports, getting those submitted to you on time. One of the key recommendations of the forensic accounting investigation was that the financial reports have to be right. And so, and
Go figure, right?
it sounds so silly, but it's such a critical thing. And I think at the time, we probably heard that from the auditors because reports were being provided and there were typos, or it wasn't clear, or the backup documentation didn't support what was being represented. And I think, Dawn, to your point, that is the purpose of the CBOC, to review the expenditures of the bond program and to make sure that they are appropriate, accurate, and true. And we have, I would say it's becoming a much longer history of partnership about really developing the reports that tell the story and don't just give the overall number, but give the level of detail that really enables you to do the critical work of making that evaluation. So I want to appreciate your flexibility and your support for us to be able to get these in. But we do find ourselves here tonight and we don't have everything that is owed to the CBOC and what is truly agreed upon. And I also want to own that. The reports that are missing tonight are the consolidated budget reports from accountability. They are available through the reporting portal, but as part of the reconciliation efforts that need to happen on a monthly basis to ensure that we're bringing you accurate and timely information that you can count on, that reconciliation is still ongoing. The other report that's identified here is the KPI report, which is a report that was produced in something that we used to provide. I don't know what the exact frequency was, but at a minimum, we need to be providing on an annual basis that speaks more broadly to the facilities program across all of the different facilities funds. And one of the things that we're committed to doing is providing the KPI report, not only for this fiscal year, but for fiscal years past, as the CBOC is preparing the annual report so that you'll have all of that data, which was owed to you then, but we'd like to provide it to you now.
Do we have any comments from the CBOC or the public on the entire staff reports?
Yeah, I have, is it anything from the public?
There are no hands at this time.
So thank you, Melissa. A couple questions. One is just on that last note, is there a specific staff capacity issue with regards to the ability to provide, and can we make that known so that we can support or lift up that need to decision makers?
So if you don't mind, that is actually the next agenda item.
Oh, all right.
We
Well,
talk about that in
can hold
more
that thought.
specific terms. Okay. Do you have anything else on the reports that she has?
yes. With the double year expense adjustment, that's just a accounting error, right? No money had gone out.
So, yeah, so it would be like, in the year-end process, when the expense moves over and it's in 2 fiscal years in the reporting, you have to essentially clean that up. Our budgets roll, our contracts roll, we have to report on a fiscal year basis. And so it is cleaning up the expense and entry in the ledger. Yes,
Okay.
that's correct.
And is that in accountability?
So that's in our financial system. And so our general ledger lives in our enterprise system, which is Munis. That's our financial system. I like to think of accountability as like our project ledger. So in any district financial system, and ours is really set up as any school district should set them up following a very specific set of rules and criteria that lives in a fiscal year basis. And that makes sense, right? My daughter is in this grade this year and she'll be in this grade next year, right? This year's students, this year's money. Projects very rarely, if ever, live in a fiscal year. In fact, we do so much work in the summer, it's almost impossible for them to not cross fiscal years since we're June 1st to July, or excuse me, July 1st to June 30. And so I think just greater attention to detail in the year-end process to ensure that we're doing all of the year-end things to make sure that we have a clean ledger in our system.
Yeah. So is that process manual, or do you have software tools that are you're running reports, or can you describe a little bit what goes into that?
I think it's a little bit of both. So the system can give you the different types of reports and the different types of data that you need. But the year-end process kind of comes with a checklist of all the things that need to be done across all the different funds and resources. And there's a calendar that's issued by the Business Services Department that talks about all of the different tasks and when they're due. And so one of the things that Sinja's been supporting with is kind of in preparing for year end, just working through all of those reports and identifying if there were any anomalies so that we could do the manual journals to clean up those entries in anticipation of the year end.
Okay, so if you missed one, the independent audit through their sampling process would theoretically catch
Absolutely.
that.
Mhm.
And then would it be possible to provide an actual invoice at a future meeting to, one of these larger line items?
Yeah,
To
absolutely.
see how $1.2 million is spent over the course of 30 days?
Mhm.
And maybe as in the point of education and just awareness.
Absolutely. So, that's something that, CBOCs have done in the past, is picked a couple of invoices kind of in advance of the meeting, and then we can include it in the packet, and then we can engage in that conversation here in the meeting. Not only connecting kind of the invoice and the work and kind of the scope and how that ties to our projects, which I think is always a great kind of learning opportunity, but also how that particular invoice then ties into all of the financial reports that come before the committee as well.
To that end, between the two of you, how would you suggest that we proceed with that? Staff randomly picks out 2 invoices or checks?
I like the big one.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
But, or since you're the one that is asking for this primarily, do you want to work together to figure out which ones I mean, or do you want them to hide the really embarrassing one and only show you the ones that they want you to see?
I think, well, yeah, I mean, I think because I think there's some questions I have bubbling up that I want to save until I get to kind of see an invoice. But obviously there's a lot of, 5 figures here, but there's a few 7 figures. And so I would go with just the larger invoices to see.
Okay, what I'm talking about is not new. I mean, Anton would do exactly what we're talking about.
Cool.
Working together with staff. And so, I mean, I want you to work it out about how the process should work. Yeah. To satisfy our needs, because if it's his needs, it's our needs.
Yeah, I mean, the 1.2 from Alton Construction is a great one we could start with.
Absolutely.
I've been wondering exactly about that particular one.
It's just,
Looks fishy to me.
sticking out.
Any other questions or comments? Andrew? No. Okay.
Last
So
question, sorry.
can I propose something along with the request for 1.2? So that's a pay application, and it would also have a resulting retention, which would also be reflected here. And so could we bring both of those items forward to also share the relationship?
Yeah, that'd be great. And just add maybe a general question around the rhyme or reason why we have multiple invoices from the same company on a given month. Is it divided by by tasks within their scope of work for the most part?
It's an excellent question, and you're spot on. So because this report reflects for you the short account code, what the account code is it's essentially a sentence. It tells you how you paid for it and what it is. And really the what it is comes from the object code. And so the 2 that you see here for Alton for February, it's because it's a design build contract. And so their design services come out of a different account than the construction services. And so they submit one pay application. And so part of it goes to a design account, part of it goes to a construction account. Retention is only held on the construction component pursuant to public contract code, and then that shows up in the retention. And so it's a wonderful example because it actually results in, 3 different entries here on the sheet.
Okay. And yeah, then the next one down, Aquatech, is the same code, but it's because there's 2 different months processed and paid there.
Anything else?
Okay, I'm done.
But we can bring that to next month's meeting?
Yeah.
Absolutely, we will.
I've got just one item to discuss, but just this for Lynn. If you got a question, you got a comment, please make sure we raise your hand, jump up and down if we can see you. But we do not want to exclude your on here, Lynn. Okay, on the KPI report, your recommendation would be on frequency, once per year, annually?
that would definitely be the recommendation. Transitioning to fiscal year definitely better aligns with our financial system and is part of the partnership in reducing the, truly just kind of the amount of work that needs to be done to do the report, because we can pull those reports for the fiscal year. It's much easier than doing a calendar year report. So that would definitely be our recommendation. If it was the desire of the CBOC to see that report, right, maybe from July to December, and then at the end of the year to represent the whole year, you know, we can work towards that.
With the other CBOC members here, what would you recommend? Annually, more frequently? Keep in mind, this is a cost factor as well.
Yeah, annual is fine. I would just say a baby step could be just a list of the KPIs you're tracking. I'm curious to see what the KPIs are aside from how we're doing on them right now, but just list the KPIs.
Okay, I mean, that seems to be an independent thing from this. I mean, I'm not saying we do that, but I'm talking about moving forward.
Yeah, so what I would propose that I think might be helpful, because we haven't brought that report forward to the committee in quite some time, is how about we bring to next month's meeting the KPI report for last fiscal year, which would then be reconciled. It would be a true up of last fiscal year. That would be a great resource document to support the annual report. And I think that would be a great way to introduce the report and kind of how that was historically created. I think each one of our financial reports kind of has someone who I think was really instrumental, and it's part of their legacy that we still have that report. But maybe there's a desire from the current committee to do something a little bit different. And I think the best way to facilitate that conversation is to bring in.
Any thoughts, Andrew?
I'm fine with annually.
Okay, well, we figure on annual.
Yeah.
Okay, which takes us to step 2 on that. For this fiscal year, what month could we expect that to be made available? For the July meeting, the August meeting?
So in order to be an accurate report, the year-end process, while the closing day of the year-end is June 30, the year-end process is usually something that's completed in August. And so we'll be bringing forward to the committee the June 30 report, but it'll basically say preliminary until we call it till the books are closed. And so the final books are closed, approved. I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. We would definitely have it by September, if not by August. It would just depend on the time of the close. The closing of the books, which is something that happens district-wide. So that's something that happens in partnership with the business office.
Okay, we prefer finalized.
Yeah, so September. And what's great is we have our joint meeting in September. And so that should be something that we're bringing to our joint meeting for sure, because there's really no reason why we can't make that deadline.
Okay.
But we can provide the KPI report for previous fiscal years. Those are owed, and we should be bringing those forward.
Okay, all right. Then why don't we go ahead and move on, since we're running out of time. Okay, let's go on to move item under G, the difficulty in getting financial reports. And I want to make it crystal clear to begin with. I am not the kind of person that likes to point fingers and say it's your fault. Okay, finding fault is not an issue with me. How do we move forward to get the financial reports that we have? And for the information of the rest of the group here, we used to have 13 reports that we were demanding every month. Okay, and then over a period of years, we kept working them down till we came up with essentially 6 reports plus the KPI. Okay, I provided a sheet to each of you, listing what those reports are. Now, the day after I got elected, I met with Melissa. We sat down with talking about things that moving forward, and this was one of the things. We all agreed that these were the reports that we needed every month. And as she pointed out, we're not getting a couple of them. Okay, and so what I want to do is kind of bring up what has been the problem and how can we make this happen? And in particular, I would like to with the blessing of the rest of the CBOC, to write a letter to the superintendent and the board saying, we've discussed this, we have a problem, and it's not just today's problem, it's been going on for a very long time. And I will be going to do some research and finding out month by month, what reports were we getting, what were we not getting? But we need help from the people that have the authority to make a change, to provide you with the resources that you need, whether it's in more personnel, whether it's more time. Yeah, one of those miracle code breakers we saw in the movies that can just look at something and like in The Accountant, where he looks at 15 years worth of annual reports overnight and solves all their problems. But I'd like to hear from the rest of CBOC, but also yourself. What is the problem and what can we do to help? Anybody else at the CBOC, do we have any other comments or questions on that? You were mentioning some of yours.
Yeah, my intent as a committee members to help lift up and shine a light on the opportunity to fill the gap, whatever that may be, and ask that of the decision maker.
So I see things, it's like in my union, you know, we've got the contractors, we've got the clients, we've got us. It's a three-legged stool. You remove one of those legs, stool collapses. We have a symbiotic relationship. We are in partnership. Yeah. We cannot proceed without your help. I'm sure you'd love it if we were disappeared, but it ain't gonna happen.
Yeah,
So,
we don't have a bond program without a CBOC.
so, I mean, it's incumbent upon us to be able to figure out what can we do to make your job easier. At the same time, again, I come from a house of labor. I'd chew Melissa out all of the time on trying to get me these financial reports on time. I said, do not take time away from your family to do this stuff. And what does she do? She sends me an email at 10:25 p.m. at 11 o'clock with the information.
He also responds at those hours.
Yeah.
He's also.
But I don't have a life. I don't have a life. I don't have a family to deal with. Oh, and by the way, I'm sorry, you talked about not getting me the things on time. We set that one meeting we came up with an agreed upon time frame to get the reports to me, but that built-in wiggle room. Okay, now this last week, we did not have things as quickly as we wanted. Did we get the agenda packet out before 6:15? Yes, we did. Okay, so we worked within the constraints that we had. I had 3 different meetings on Thursday. That made it difficult. I had to take my mom out for an early Mother's Day lunch, which she appreciated, by the way, because I used my credit card and not hers. But we're still able to get it done on time. And I appreciate that fact, but I also made it crystal clear to her. Now, that would not be the first meeting that we did not have our financial reports, or all of them. Life goes on. I know that it will. And so, yeah, I got to prioritize these things as much as possible. But what can we do to help? Would it be more personnel? Better personnel? Yeah. Take more, put this stuff off your plate so you can check all this stuff. But what can we do?
Well, and I really appreciate that. I really kind of thought about the best answer to that question. And a lot of times I think the best answer comes from looking to the past. How has it worked? And maybe what are some of the challenges of the past, and how did we address them in a way that helped us move forward? So one of the things I thought a lot about was the program management plan. So we spent about 2 years developing that plan together. And one of the reoccurring themes that came up over and over again was, is it an internal control and is it a process? Or is it because that person's doing it, right? And so this is one of the largest bond programs in the state. And I think we have to have systems and internal controls in place such that whoever is in the position, they have the ability to continue to produce the agreed upon reports, right? That are timely and accurate, and all of those kinds of things. And so one of the things that we have is kind of like, and I'll be honest, I believe it's about 20 pages, but it's like a procedure. here are the reports that you pull from the financial system. And then do the associated monthly reconciliation in order to produce the financial reports, right? So we have the form, we've kind of agreed on the format, right? What it looks like, here are the boxes to fill in. What are the functions of the report? I think that's something that we've also really partnered on. How are we providing transparency and all of the information such that there is clarity on how every dollar spent, not only for the CBOC, for the auditors, for the community, for the board, for everyone who is an investor in this program, right? Our taxpayers, our community. And so I think part of what we need to do is make sure that we have the written process and procedures so that no matter who's in the role, right? If it's not me in the role, the person in the role knows what they're looking for, and is it accurate, is it complete, and is it timely? And that's something that we have some of the pieces for, but I think we definitely need more. And then the other thing that I think is really important, and this was something that we talked about to some length at the joint board and CBOC meeting, is just the accountability for it, right? We have committed to providing these reports. We know when these reports are due. We have our calendar of CBOC meetings from now until the end of the year. So similar to the audit, if we need to make adjustments internally so that we can provide them by the deadline, we have to do that. And not doing that is, not an option. But it also pivots on the line to the point of them being late is if they're not accurate and if they're not ready, then I can't provide them. And so when the reports aren't provided on time, it's because they're still not finalized. And that, I think, is also part of our commitment and really our responsibility and accountability to the CBOC. Doesn't mean we're perfect, right? It is possible that we could provide you a report that would have an error. But our due diligence is that we've reviewed the report, that it's accurate, that it's reasonable, that if there's a question or something's not clear, we've looked at the backup to make sure that it matches and that everything aligns. And that's the reason why I don't have the AA reports in a printed form tonight, because they were not ready. And I feel like it is very much my responsibility as an implementation of the forensic accounting investigation item. But if they're not ready, I can't provide them.
Well, you've been around for a while. I've been around even longer. I can assure each of you that what we've been asking for didn't just happen. I mean, a period of years where we tried to refine the process of what do we actually need. That's why we no longer ask for 13 different reports. We're down to 6 reports that serve our needs on there. But you would also know, I think Melissa could attest to that, she's been around long enough. We've got some CBOCers that read every damn line and they will question those things.
And should.
Yes. And so staff cannot afford to give us inaccurate reports or partial reports because somebody's going to spot it and it's going to destroy the credibility of our entire process. And that doesn't serve anybody any good. So I appreciate the fact that she holds off. If she's not giving us a completed report that she's verified, she just doesn't give it to me. And I'd much prefer that than finding out that there's been an error and we start questioning everything from now on. That's not a good process at all. But I said, unless somebody objects, I plan to write a letter to the board, not just an email, an actual letter to the superintendent and the board, letting them know we've got a problem and we need to do something to fix it and some suggestions on fixing it.
Yeah, I'd be happy to co-sign that.
To do it on, I mean, there's a difference between me getting up, speaking to the board as under public comment, and me getting up and writing a letter on the letterhead of the CBOC. Because that will be included in our annual report as well. We've been making an effort to try to solve this problem. So, go ahead.
I'm just curious, is there from staff, do you guys have a sense of like what could be improved to address the issue? Is it like a staffing issue primarily or something else? Is it a consultant issue?
So, it's definitely something that we're working on internally.
Because it strikes me that, like you said, for a, one of the biggest bond programs in the state, that, I mean, there was a time when this whole building was full of people working on it, and now it's like nobody here. Which just directly would seem like that might be part of the problem. I don't know if there's been an effort, or there's not funding to hire staff, or it's hard to do, or there's just, I don't know, but it seems like that. Just thinking it logically might be part of the problem.
That's definitely been part of the historical problem. School accounting is annualized and it's very different. Project accounting, it's almost like running a second set of books, right? Because it's got to be project based. And those are all of the requirements associated not only with our debt management, our bond management, our audit management. There isn't any other fund that goes through a performance and a financial audit outside of the district-wide audit, right? The bond program is part of the district-wide audit. And then in addition to that, and I agree with it as required, there's so much at stake with these dollars. And so that's why we're required to have those additional audits. And I think over the years, since I've been here in the last 10 years, we've had a significant amount of audits. And I think those audits have made us better because they've said, here's what you need to pay attention to. And as a result of those audits, we've put in a significant amount of internal control. But from an internal staffing standpoint and even external staffing point, our percent of central cost for consultants and just staff has gone down significantly. I pride myself in that a little bit because I think every dollar that we spend on a project makes that project go further. But you still have to spend enough money centrally to ensure that you have the proper internal controls to make sure that you are doing all of the compliance-based things that are required. So there's a little bit of a balancing there. So it has been hard to fill some of the financial positions because it's a challenge, right? You've got kind of a whole body of school accountants and they know annualized accounting. There are also people that know project accounting very well, but they're less familiar with kind of the regimented fiscal year kind of school accounting. And I think a lot of districts use consultants to support in these spaces. And while we do use consultants to support in our spaces, I think part of the commitment since the forensic accounting investigation has been, consultants are really supplemental. And there has to be a core internal district expertise to truly manage the consultants and make sure that everything that we're doing at its core is being completed and managed to fidelity. And so I think that's part of what the program management plan is about too, right? Back to that part that if the person changes, the things that we've built in time to become credible, to do things differently, to try to rebuild trust. We have to keep doing, even if the person changes, that internal control doesn't change. So that has truly been a challenge. It's not a position that's easily filled or an expertise that's like, readily available in the job market. But I do think that there's a lot of foundational forms and kind of process and procedure that we use to try to ensure that we have some consistency and uniformity in our practice. So I've mentioned the name Sinja a couple of times tonight. She was really instrumental at the time of the forensic accounting investigation of helping to put in some of those internal controls and build those processes. And she has retired, but she's here for a couple of months to help us be on track and keep an eye on things. And that's been really helpful for us.
You come off mute.
The host asked me to unmute. I unmuted it and that one, we got the reverberation.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
I don't know why it did it.
Okay, I mean, that's, sorry for the interruption, but I was just following instructions.
Sorry.
The machine told me what to do.
Yeah.
So I mean, all of that is true, but nonetheless, we still have the responsibility.
But I guess are there currently like vacant positions that would be doing that where there's a seeking to fill or? So I'm trying to understand.
There's related positions that I think could support in some of those areas. Yeah.
You know, Melissa's kind of doing 2 jobs right now, right?
That's it?
Just to lay it out there. Sorry, I couldn't help myself.
I mean, I tell people that all the time. Yeah.
Well, I mean, she had multiple jobs to begin with, and now it's just official that it's multiple jobs.
I'm sorry, just out of respect, I do not look at some of the expense reports where you're demanding you'd be paid for one job and you'd be paid additionally for the other job. So you're making more than the superintendent. See? Don't ask, don't tell. I appreciate the fact that you're doing a lot more than you should have to. Okay. Mr. Do we have?
Yeah, I got a couple questions. I'm just want to dig a little deeper and see if we can request kind of like, frankly, like an org chart to understand what positions are filled and what positions are vacant and what positions support financial reporting. That could make it really crystal clear. Also,
To the next meeting.
Yeah, can we throw more on your plate?
Well, we used to have in our backup for the payroll, it listed the positions, the FTE percent. So I mean, we have that information.
and then I was thinking, I would just throw it out there. Would it make a difference if we did financial reports on a bi-monthly basis? I mean, it would be a sacrifice. Don shaking his head, but just from a thought experiment, does that make a difference in your ability to deliver, more accurate reports on time? Or is that not a factor? Is the timing, the turnaround timing, month to month, a major factor?
Really great question. So, on the one hand, if we provided the reports every other month, we still have to do a monthly reconciliation. Because to do like true accounting and verification and reconciliation, the longer you go between the reconciliation, the greater opportunity you have for error. And part of what we did with our program management plan is we've almost built in ongoing internal auditing of ourselves. So like we have a payment approval form, which is essentially a contract reconciliation, so that every time we have an invoice, not only are we paying the invoice, but we're reconciling the contract. Because when you do have contracts that cross fiscal years and have commas associated with them, it's a high risk game. You have to be right. You just have to be right. And so we've built in kind of these internal auditing mechanisms that we do in our daily transactional work to make sure that if there's a problem that we're catching it right away, so we can resolve it while it's at that lowest problem possible. That only saves us time. If you find a mistake 2 months out, 3 months out, it's going to cost you a lot more time to fix it than if you're reconciling it with every transaction. And so we've kind of built that in with our internal controls. The second part of the question, though, it's absolutely true, right? And so we can't control what is the first day of the month, what day of the week that falls on. So a good example is when the first of the month falls on a Monday, right? And then our CBOC is going to be after that. We can't do the final reconciliation of the previous months until you hit that first of the year. You have to close the month before you do the reconciliation, right? When we're running a lot of these reports in the system, you say, give me the report for this month or give me the report through this date. And so depending on the number of days, business days, so working days that we have from the first of the month to the due date to deliver the financial reports to Dawn for posting, that can vary significantly to being like, oh, we ended up with 10 days or we ended up with like 5 days. And that's just calendar based. So in the past, we've adopted different types of conventions, like a project report. If you get project photos from February and you review them in April, it almost doesn't make sense. So much happens in construction in that period of time. Doesn't invalidate the report, but the value of that information is lost, right? So like project photos and project reports, those really, like, she just has to meet that gap, whatever it is. When it comes to financial reports, in addition to like whatever that gap is in terms of days, there are also months reconciliation that are going to be greater than others. And so there are different things within the annualized kind of budgeting process. There are different types of reports that exist. Interest earnings come in quarterly. So certain months are going to have a greater level of reconciliation than others. And so those are some of the confluence of factors that could make it more difficult to produce the report by the deadline. And so that's true, but that's not necessarily something that we can control.
So in the proposed scenario, if we were just okay with reviewing financials from that are a little bit out of date, so not, taking the need to reconcile in a short period of time out of the equation, does that help?
So that would help.
Or my logic here is that, or is it that the person doing this still needs to be working on reconciliation and can't be doing what we want them to do instead of that or whatever, which comes back to the staff capacity issue.
If I had a magic wand and I could do one thing that I think would relieve some of that tension, it would be maybe instead of the CBOC meeting being the second Monday of the month, maybe we look at the third Monday. Because then whatever the scenario is for whatever day of the week that the first day falls on, right? Sunday through Saturday, it's built in that whole other week. Because ultimately, as soon as the month end closes, you still have to do your monthly reconciliation anyway. But if the CBOC meeting was the following week, which happens a couple of times in our annual calendar this year, there's a couple of months where we've partnered in our long-term planning for our meetings. And based on other types of conflicts, our CBOC meeting is going to be like the third week. And I think in those months where that's naturally occurring, it eases some of that tension. But I also know that scheduling this meeting and making sure that it's on a date that doesn't have conflict also comes with all of its own resulting tensions of these meetings are most valuable when everybody can make it. And so I offer that as a consideration of something that if that is a lighter lift, that would just functionally always create another week for them to be produced.
Yeah, I mean, I would encourage the committee to look at that.
I've already put it on their agendized for next meeting.
It seems like a very low lift and low cost, low effort. And maybe we need to look further down the next month, but
Well, no, I'm saying put it on the agenda for next month to reschedule the rest of the year. Okay, and because so first off, it's not agendized for us to take action tonight. But we'll put it out there with arguments. But that was actually gonna ask the question, if we extended it, would that make it easier on you? And you already answered that.
Well, and honestly, I hadn't even thought about that until we were having this conversation. So, I mean, I really appreciate the questions, and I think that's what partnership does, right? Like, I'm looking at it from my lens and thinking about it, and just in the conversation, I'm like, actually, yeah, that could create some more space, because the monthly reconciliation has to be done regardless. But finalization of the reports and creating some more time to get there could only help.
one more.
Go ahead. No.
So it's great to hear that costs have been driven down of the overall kind of admin burden.
Mhm.
At the same time, as those costs go down and down and down, we start to get nervous that there's no people
Mhm.
left, right?
Mhm.
If we go to zero, we have lots of money for projects and no people to do it. So there is some, issue there, right? So how do we compare, how do we benchmark to other bond programs of similar sizes? Maybe that's something we need to look at. How does the bond program kind of make decisions based on that? How do how does the board discuss and entertain that question of where we should be in terms of staffing to make sure that we can deliver? Because we can drive that down, but that then means maybe there's no um, secondary person that can step in when this other person retires. And, if it's retirement, that should all be kind of, a little bit predictable. People leaving without, for another job is less predictable, but thinking about investing some of the bond funds into redundancy in human resources and backup plans and things. So I'm just curious about being able to see that picture.
So I think two things come to mind. So one of them is, it's been my experience that 20 small projects is a lot different than 3 big ones. On larger projects, there's a greater sophistication a lot of times with the contractors. So a good example is the pay application. We're going to look at one at the next CBOC meeting. When the pay application comes in, there's a pretty specific review that has to be done. And it's not always accepted the first time it comes through, right? And I would say, based on my 20 years of doing this, on the bigger jobs, it has a much greater approval rating when it first comes in as a draft, just from like an administrative clerical error versus on smaller jobs. And so the overhead, the district overhead for a bunch of small jobs looks a lot different than a few big jobs. And part of the transition that our bond program's going through right now is we're getting to a place where we're gonna have 3 big jobs. Lake's gonna be finishing up, Shannon's gonna be finishing up, Hercules is, essentially finished up. And so instead of having kind of a handful of projects, we're gonna have Kennedy, Richmond, and Stage. And so how you staff centrally for larger and complex projects should look different, in my experience and in my opinion, than when you're staffing a handful of smaller jobs. So that's definitely one of the changes that we have kind of coming. The second point, I think, to your question about just ensuring that you have redundancy and uniformity and kind of clarity on performance and delivery, I think a lot of that value comes from having kind of the procedure and process of how it needs to be done. Because no one can predict tomorrow. And I think some of us have experienced that and seen how hard that can be. But I think if there's an agreed upon, like, here's the process, here's how you do it, then that not only creates kind of the training opportunity, but kind of, this is how you do it. These are the reports you run. This is what you're verifying. You have to reconcile. And beyond that, you still have to be an accountant, right? Like, there are general accounting principles and, basics that are built into that reconciliation and kind of that fiscal services duty that live outside of the process, but the process on how to do that and having that be something that's dialed in, I think, is how we ensure that whoever is sitting here in the future, that we're delivering on the commitments that are being made. So I think it's twofold. But I do agree with you. We need to have the people to do the work, or the work doesn't get done, and that's just unacceptable. So the responsibility is to have the people and to do the work.
Anything else?
I'm good.
Thank you. Okay, for the record, GMA clocked in at about 7:45 p.m. Okay, and what we also lost, about the same time, we lost trustee Smith Foltz. On this particular issue, one last thing, because we are really running out of time now. We got a tremendous amount of business left to do in only 35 minutes. This is with but the frequency of the reports. I've been to fair number of other CBOCs, okay? But some that meet only quarterly, some that meet annually. And it's almost like the chair has a big rubber stamp in front of them. Whatever's put in front of them, they just stamp it approved because they haven't had a chance to look at anything. I take great pride in the fact that we're able to look at our reports in a timely fashion. So if we spot something that is out of place, we can correct it before the project is done. Just something to keep in mind. Again, and do we have any public comments on this item?
I see no hands at this
I
time.
didn't think so. That sounds good. The next item on there are the 3 consent calendar items. I'm just going to briefly explain them to see if anybody wants to pull them off. We have the member information request log, which is not even posted on there because we haven't had any additions to it since September of last year. Okay, so I don't even have that. I placed the reports from the chair to the board. We had since our last meeting, we had 2 standing reports, which was good. But I also had comments to the board. I brought up the fact about the Spanish language translations, which we'll touch more on when that agendized item came up. And then we have the calendar itself. If there's no objections, we'll just accept the consent calendar as posted. I like it. Okay. Item number K, which is the CBOC secretary. We should have a secretary. We don't exactly have a lot of people. And the few people that we have, it's not like they're jumping up and down. Damn, I'm glad that she left, so now I can take over that spot. My recommendation, we have 2 potential new CBOC members that may be joining us. I doubt they'll be joining us for our next meeting in June, but definitely, almost certainly by July, hopefully, fingers crossed. My recommendation, if everybody approves, I will continue to draft the minutes for the meetings and we will have a posted election for a secretary at our July meeting. Does that work for everybody?
Works for me.
Yeah, I mean, is there any issue with the chair and secretary role being done by the same
Well,
person?
we used to have an outside contractor doing it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm just.
Yeah.
From a parliamentarian perspective, I was just.
No, and
throwing it out there.
but the minutes, doesn't matter who drafts the minutes, they still come before the full CBOC
Right.
for approval.
Right.
If they say they don't like them, and certainly we've had occasions like that, that make changes. Okay, does it work for everybody?
Works for me.
Okay. Give me 2 seconds of drawing down really important stuff, SEC, that's good. Okay, on item L, the annual report. Okay, we have several items on here. We brought back the report that Brendan drafted. I've got a few issues with them. They are not really on content as much as clarifications. I don't want to spend a lot of time on the annual report unless Brendan does. If everybody's okay, I can sit down with Brendan and we work out the actual language that concerns me. We can look at something mutually acceptable. And then we'll be adding photographs and reformatting. You'll love this. I'm saying when I printed out my copy, my computer, when it talks to my printer on a PDF, it does not like some of the things. So I mean, I had all kinds of things circled on my printed copy. Then we looked at the electronic copy, they're fine. It's just, but I will be on the phone with Adobe to find out what is the hell wrong. I'm paying you $650 a year for your software. Well, why doesn't it work right? Does anybody have any questions or comments on the annual report, and are they okay with Brendan and I sitting down and working out these little issues?
I'm okay with it.
Okay, then, and second question is, do we want to bring whatever we come up with on this? Do we want to bring it with the photos? Do we want to bring it back to take up another 15, 18 pages of your packet and for approval, or are we okay with just approving it right now?
I plan on approving it now.
Yeah.
Okay, in that case, I will make a motion that we approve the tentatively revised annual report. We have a
We don't
second.
have quorum.
Well,
Oh, yeah, we don't.
no, as far as I'm concerned, we've got 4 people. We've got Lynn
Okay,
online and John, that's 5.
Well, we have yes, we have both of them online.
we have quorum?
I'm saying, yeah,
Okay.
I'm sorry, we have 4. Okay,
It's clear.
until I get something on a letterhead from a lawyer saying that, no, we don't.
They're just
Okay.
on separate screens for me, so I wanted to confirm we still had both there.
Okay.
And we do.
But mine, got them on one screen. Hang on, wait.
I second the motion
Okay,
to approve the annual report from 22-23.
okay. We need a roll call on that. We will start with myself, Don Gosney, yes. Brendan,
Yes,
Andrew?
Yes. We lost Lynn.
No, she's still here.
I'm sorry, okay, sorry.
She's just in attendees because I can't promote a phone number.
That's Jen.
Oh,
No, no,
yeah,
no,
Lynn's in
yeah,
the other way
I got
around.
it. I just,
Lynn's the panelist.
yeah, I can't see both screens, I mean, both of them at the same time. Lynn, are you still here with us? Lynn, are you there? Ja, are you there? Ja, are you present? Can you unmute yourself?
She unmuted.
Hi, Tia is here.
Okay, good to hear from you first. Welcome. Did you hear what our motion was to go ahead and approve the tentative annual report with a couple of minor changes?
Yes,
Are you okay with that? Yes or no?
yes.
All right, I love you. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. I know star 6 is a key to speak out. Thank you so much.
Okay, then we have a 4, we have a majority that is passed. We have the template that Brendan put together. Do you want to go over that, or do you want to, has everybody read it? Reviewed it?
if there's any questions or comments, we can go over it, but
Andrew, do you have any questions or comments on that?
No.
Okay, Jacques, do you have any questions or comments on the template, which would be page 73 of the by the way, this is a fluid document. It can be changed at any time. And it doesn't
No
even take,
question so far.
okay, it doesn't even take a
No
motion. to
question
approve.
so far.
Okay. Then as long as we don't have any questions or comments negatively on that, we'll just go ahead and proceed with it. Okay, I provided 2 versions of it. One of them in the packet itself has line numbers on there, so you can go. I got a problem with line 72. The other one does not have there, so you can download it. And by the way, well, I'll talk about that later. I also included in the packet, I put together a list of the links to all of the agenda packets and the video links for those committee members that want to work on the current agenda packet. So they can easily open these things up as opposed to going through on the website, because that's a long process. Just going from one to the other, take about 5 or 6 steps. I know because I had to do that for, well, 4.5 years of this. So anyway, that's just a tool. Are there any public comments on the annual report?
I see no hands at this time.
I like that. Okay, let's go on to item number 7, CBOC membership. Okay. Page 87 of our packet. Hang on.
last page. No?
No, last page is there.
No. 87? Oh, yeah.
Okay, all right. wanted to discuss the previous application process and the current application process. Okay, most of the items are the same. Okay, previously, okay, the CBOC application was submitted to district staff and the CBOC chair. Okay, application included basic contact information, which position is being applied to, which subcommittees the applicant might want to serve on, the questions asking why the applicant wants to serve, and a resume that would explain the background of the applicant, as well as what makes the applicant qualified to serve on the CBOC. Their current process does not ask for a resume. It says you can submit one. But to a large extent, when we're looking at the application, we're really not seeing much more than 1 or 2 sentences about why the person even wants to be on the CBOC, let alone what makes them qualified. This is just bringing this up to the attention. Item number 3 on here, application is agendized to be reviewed at a public facilities committee meeting, which consisted of two board members. Okay, this was when we actually had a facilities committee, and they would hold public meetings. Okay, the applicants were provided 5 standardized questions by the facility committee. The public would then be allowed to ask questions and comment on the application. This was all done publicly. Item number 6 on there, all applications were forwarded to the full Board of Education for consideration. Okay, first off, we do not have a facilities committee anymore. It goes to what is referred to euphemistically as a selection committee. That is not a word that is used in the board policy to describe it, because they do not make a selection. Only the elected board members can make a selection of who is to be accepted onto the board, of the CBOC or not. Okay, and then so in the past several years, we've had a difficulty that not all applications are forwarded to the board for their consideration. Somebody else is making the decision that that person is not qualified for whatever reason, even going to the facilities committee when we still had it. I know, for instance, in my 6 applications, Anton Younghurst's 6 applications, Tom Panis's 5 applications, and, well, former CBOC vice chair, Guadalupe Alano's, 3 or 4 applications. A total of 21 applications were never forwarded to anybody for review. Okay, yeah, and then the applications are then agendized on a board meeting where they are reviewed. The public is allowed to comment, and then a vote is taken to either accept or deny the application. Okay, item number 8, current CBOC members wanting an additional term had to reapply and go through the same application process as new applicants. Currently, they do not. They don't even fill out an application. They are just put on the board agenda. Okay, and it is all done on a consent calendar. If we find, for instance, that there's something wrong with a person, even though they were already served for 2 years, this is an opportunity for it to be made public. We had an occasion like that with Anton Younghurst about, well, at least a dozen years ago. And once the board found out about things that he was doing, like putting in advertisements in the newspaper, telling people not to vote for the bond measures, quarter-page ads he was paying for, dummying up his own letterhead as co-chair, along with me, of the audit subcommittee, sending out a 26-page report about that the bond program should be stopped. These little issues. Again, the board, once they found out things he was doing, they rejected his application. But if it's just sent back in automatically, it's a bit of a problem. If any of our people that miss a lot of our meetings, that's something that should be that the board should be made aware of, in my opinion. Okay, but so the process is a little bit different. This selection committee is made up by board policy of 2 members from the board, 2 members from the CBOC, and 1 member from staff. Okay, the meetings are not held publicly; they're held privately via Zoom meeting. Public does not have a chance to weigh in. Last I saw, there were 8 questions that were standardized questions, but then individual people could ask additional questions, including some questions that were asked had nothing to do with the real bond program, and to do with selecting which school gets the money and how much money. For instance, again, that's something that only the elected board can decide. But anyway, this is just to make sure that the the CBOC understands past process, current process. And if they, see if we have any thoughts on this. So, and,
Have some thoughts.
okay, and whether we should bring this up to the board. You have some thoughts, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so thank you for laying it out. I think we just need to figure out how to bring more transparency to the process. One thing we could do is create kind of a checklist that allows us to understand or track, how each of these things are being accomplished and what date they're accomplished, so that, we have a record of, how a application comes in, when it was received, and a kind of a timeline of how it progresses. So that's just something that could be pretty straightforward. And then another one I wanted to take on is I do think the reapplication process is probably a good one. I think.
I'm sorry.
The reapplication, the requirement to
Okay,
reapply.
thank you.
What we could do is add a column to our membership tracker to just put the date. It says our terms in there, the dates of our term. Put the date of when you need to reapply by, or, a couple months out, so that we have,
Melissa?
so that we have, a, reminder. So, that it's something that it goes above and beyond, but it would help, in the context and culture of our committee that is, it's hard to retain. So I think it is a public, document that allows us to reference, to that. And then it doesn't also fall on the staff to remind committee members. So,
I agree with everything you just suggested. One of our problems that we run into is that the process for processing applications is taking, in my opinion, an extraordinarily long time. For instance, we've had the application for our new taxpayer, CBOC member. We've had that for over a month, and we haven't even scheduled an interview date yet. We need to be able to, but we can't tell somebody, if that person was reapplying, we can't tell them, you need to do this by 30 days in advance, when it really is 60 or 90 or 120 days in advance. We know that. We have when we interviewed back in early February. There was a question about the legality of, because was she a district employee or not? Okay, and we still haven't really got that 100% resolved 4 months later. So we need to nail down with staff and with the board a more concrete timeline about what should happen, how much time should be allotted after we receive an application.
Well, tracking is the first step, so that we can,
Yes.
know the facts, right? Because there may be delays associated with different nuances. Like, is this person an employee? It maybe is not clear cut, depending. And so then somebody has to be consulted, and maybe it's legal, it has to be consulted. And so that is going to draw out the process, versus this person is a known quantity, so I think tracking is number one.
I agree. Yes, sir.
Is this something that historically is within the purview of the CBOC or is it like we recommend to the board the process, or do we actually have the
No,
wherewithal to set the process and do that all on our own?
my apologies for interrupting you,
That's okay.
but no, it is a recommendation to the board.
Okay, gotcha.
It is part of our board policy.
Yeah.
But it's just like the laws of the land. Okay, we all know we're not supposed to go more than 65 on the freeway, but as long as nobody's enforcing that law, we can do whatever we want, right? And so we need to make sure that we bring this up as a discussion to the board, because it is 100% in their hands. They can direct staff to do something. But that, just letting them know, but we have a problem. And here are our recommendations for solving that. Okay,
And they're responsible for staff, for maintaining the membership on the CBOC. The board is.
yes,
Not us.
absolutely, we don't have a say in it at all. The best we can do, even right now with the selection committee, we are part of the team that makes a recommendation, to the board. And even when it was with the facilities committee, all they could do, even though they were 2 out of the 5 board members, those 2 people could make a recommendation to the full board to either accept or reject an application.
I have another comment. The resume is great, but I feel like it's a barrier to entry. And so it's great to allow somebody to upload a resume. We should probably define what a resume is in the process and in a way that's allows somebody to, reflect any and all of their life experience. A resume could communicate that you need to have had job experience in, the past. I mean, so I think it would just be, I want to make sure that if it was a hard requirement, that we made sure that it was inclusive of all life experience.
I agree with that. It's my opinion again that when we look at an application, I want to know what makes that person qualified to serve on here. That doesn't mean having engineering or accounting experience, but yes, Ellen.
I just want to let you know, Lynn sent a webinar chat saying my Wi-Fi has been wavering and keep freezing in the screen, but now it's back on.
Okay, thank you very much. When we had one, it's a taxpayer representative. She put in there, what qualifies you? I don't want to pay taxes.
Yeah.
And she's repeated that 4 or 5 times in her one paragraph, explaining why she's qualified. We had another that all he wanted to do was make sure that the school across the street from where he lived, where his 2 daughters were going to be attending, was rebuilt. And even when introduction after he was on the CBOC, yeah, tell us about yourself, Bubba. And he would pretty much repeated the same thing. And after they tore down his school and put, temporary portables that will be there for another 30 years, we never saw him again. But it would be nice to know about these kinds of things beforehand. Yes, Melissa.
Couple of things come to mind. So one of the things, it is true that kind of a step on here that we're doing, that probably goes between 2 and 3 or 10 and 11 is one of the things we've been asked to do as staff, which I do think is really important, is if based on kind of the initial contact and the information we receive, we know that they're currently in a position that precludes them by statute from being able to be a member, that we do that before we interview, and then share that with the candidate. And then sometimes in the interview, you get more information about their interpretation of how they answered those questions in the application, and then you need to get further information, and sometimes that does involve legal counsel kind of after the interview. So that's definitely part of it. But I do think that you're absolutely right in that it's too infrequent. And one of the things I know that Sylvia has shared is sometimes it can be hard to schedule the meeting. And so between kind of because I was part of the process before when there was just a facilities committee, and then in the process after, I wonder if there's a value in kind of an agreed upon time of when it's Friday afternoons at 3, or it's Tuesdays, or it's before the CBOC meeting when people are kind of already gathering. And then if we have candidates, we've kind of held that time as the time to do it. Because trying to coordinate two board members, two CBOCers, and the interviewee, and then if there's more than one, trying to have both of your interviews kind of take place at the same time. That can take some finagling.
Yeah.
And scheduling, and that's just something that we need to do, then that's not a problem. But I wonder, that was one of the benefits of the, having kind of that regularly scheduled facilities committee meeting, is we knew when the meeting was, just like we know when CBOC is, we know when board is, and so then we just plan according to that. So I wonder if that's a strategy that could help in making sure. The last thing that kind of comes to mind, in talking about the resume, because I do think that it can be a barrier. But I also think that the CBOC is still a little bit of an unknown to community members. And I think we've had so many people join the CBOC because a neighbor or a friend told them about it. And they joined the CBOC and had significant experience and expertise that's helped us do things that we never did it like that before. And now that's how we do it. And so I wonder if there's a way to create like a one pager of like, here's what the CBOC does. I think we already have all the pieces, and have that be like, Ellen went to the Richmond Chamber of Commerce meeting and she left behind like, here's how you can contact people. But I think we almost need the pamphlet or the one sheeter that's like, here's what the CBOC does, almost like the job posting that your resume supports, where you go, yeah, I could really help with these things. Because I do think that there are a lot of people in the community that could bring great experience and expertise to the committee, and they just don't know, like, they just don't know enough about the CBOC. And so I wonder if maybe that's another strategy, and that's something that we can share at the community meeting, and we can post in different places to try to help get the word out too, versus just the CBOC needs you and here's how you can apply. Maybe like just a little bit more information about, here's some of the things you can do.
Yeah.
So I agree with that 1,000%. That, previous lifetime, when I was CBOC chair, when we get an application, I would call the person up and talk to them. I want to make sure they understood before we went even a step further. This is what we do. And because sometimes they find out, that's not what I thought it was,
We've had that happen in an interview too,
Yeah.
where we say like, here's some of the subcommittees, and they're like, no, thank you.
I mean,
After the interview, they've said, no, thank you. And we want to be respectful of everybody's time. You come for an interview and then somebody goes, oh, this is maybe not what I thought it was.
But even when I was not even on the CBOC, there was a period where I was not allowed back on, I would go to things like the Richmond Neighborhood Coordinating Council, which is meeting right now. They would invite me to give reports about our school district, and I would always push for joining the CBOC. Well, somebody in the superintendent's office found out about it, and they were given specific instructions. Do not allow him to speak. I was never saying I was with the CBOC. I was never saying I was with the district. But I was providing information that they weren't getting from the district. But somebody said, just flat told him, do not allow him to speak. And then that word got around. And all of a sudden, people were telling me of these different groups. I said, no, we've been told not to allow you to speak. Because I was telling them things that the district would not say. So that was a difficult thing. But it never stopped me from speaking. And I still take advantage of social media and talking. When I gave one of the chair reports, the standing reports, the last one, as a matter of fact, because I finished off every one of them, like, please join the CBOC, and here's my contact information. Before I got back my chair, Allison Yui had emailed me. I want to join. So I know somebody's watching, somebody's listening, but we possibly got one more CBOC member just because of that. So, and by the way, almost as soon as I got back to my chair, I went outside and we talked on the phone for about 45 minutes. Again, making sure she understood what was going to be happening, and what she can do, can't do, and stuff like that. But anyway. Yes.
So one other recommendation I'd make is, I think we almost have kind of the most leverage during that initial interview to get the candidate who's energized and wants to engage to commit to something. And so I feel like they should be required to commit to a subcommittee. And we can say that it's flexible, we can always change. But I think it's a smart move, because if they say no, then we say, why do you want to be on this committee? Right.
I mean, I don't disagree at all. Right now, my goal is just to get them to show up at the regular CBOC meeting. Yeah. But no, if you want to help out in this whole process, you need to be able to commit. And it's above and beyond just showing up at a meeting once a month. We used to have a lot more subcommittees. We don't anymore. But anyway, one last thing, just a couple minutes we've got left. Just kind of a CBOC chair report. Says we have had site visits. We're trying to schedule another site visit. Ellen, I threw out, it's a possibility this Thursday or Friday, we can have a site visit to Lake. And depending upon, Brendan, are you available this Friday? Is this one of those dates that you can or cannot?
I might be, I have to check. I mean, I'm on a school field trip. So it probably ends at like 2:30. We're back by 3 for sure at the latest. So it could maybe I'll check. There's something, I think I have something at 5, but
I mean, other
might be able
people,
to squeeze
other
it
people
in.
have suggested that if we could have them during the day, it would be more accessible to them. Now, my schedule, it varies from time to time, but, I mean, this Friday, I'm supposed to be in Dublin taking pictures of the North Coast Section Meet of Champions track and field meet. But I can blow that off if I have to, because this is more important and a lot less traffic. But
So Thursday, we have our Siege meeting, so I need to make sure that I make it to Booker T by 6 o'clock, but we could do it, like starting at 3:30. Doing it earlier in the day is complicated, especially at Lake right now. We have a lot of contractors out there,
Yeah.
hence that $1.2 million payout. Things are moving out there, and I really would, especially because we now have site work going on as well as interior work. It's not a great time for folks to be trying to get through the site while we're active in construction. So I
Okay.
would prefer for it to be after.
one of the tech visits we had at Hercules, okay, one of the problems is we passed by several of the workers working where I noticed safety violations. Because it wasn't just a safety violation for their sake, but safety violation for us being close by them.
Right.
That is a worry that we would have. I understand that.
So, but either Thursday or Friday, if we did a 3:30 time period, I could make those days work.
Okay. Let me reach out to the group and find out if anybody is available and wants to do it this Friday, or say 3:30. Okay. And give you a chance to do some checking on your part, Brendan.
yeah, I go back to the school for a school event at 5, but I think I have a window. 3:30 might work.
I mean, you could always leave early if you had to, but,
That's a good point.
You would miss one of my like fabulous
It's-
commentaries on the excitement of the construction, but that's okay. I won't take offense.
I just gotta make sure I get the group picture early.
That's right.
Okay. But, Andrew, what are your thoughts on Friday afternoon this week?
Yeah, I think that works for me.
Yeah, earlier you told me you were available all day, Thursday and Friday, but
Friday afternoon.
things change.
What time will we be talking about?
3:30 to 5,
That should work.
all right? I can now reach out to everybody else and see if anybody else is available. But, and just very quickly, a report when Ellen was able to negotiate a site visit to Kennedy High School for us. The things that she has done to my old school. Try to imagine, that, low income apartment that you were renting out, you come back in after they've moved out and it looked like, as you say, it looked like Beirut, in a war zone. But that's what things look like when you don't clean it up to get ready to tear it down.
That is true.
but it was-
Plus, we are making sure that all of the parts and pieces of the building that are still useful get reused.
Which is good. Why don't you
exciting.
report real, in 10 seconds or less about that, resalvaging, repurposing stuff. What kind
Right,
of
one
stuff?
of the opportunities that we give to all of our M&O staff, as well as technology and food service where applicable, is for them to be able to come in and take, parts of the building that are still useful, to be able to use in other locations. So that happened at Kennedy, and it's not always done the cleanest way possible because it doesn't need to be.
Okay. Any comments from anybody about the report I've just given? Okay, hearing none. Our last item on there is future agenda topics. Sorry, I didn't skip anything on.
Oh, we have additional comments on this.
Oh, please.
Lynn said I'm available most Thursdays. I can't make this Friday. My daughter is prepping for prom.
Oh,
Hey,
cool. Can I go?
prom.
Absolutely not.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I get that a lot. Even back when I was at prom
So
age.
spoken of a father of a daughter.
All right, I'm sorry, real quickly, item number Q, CBOC website. There was a time when we had blessing the chair to actually add things on, or take things off of the CBOC website as necessary. But as Melissa pointed out, even she can't do it anymore. Gotta go through channels. That's unfortunate, but as I was trying to gather all those agenda links, I found missing items on there. I found inappropriate items. I found dead links. And I worked with Sylvia on a couple of them, and Melissa, and we're getting those corrected, but there's even more. About what we need to do is to go over, compartmentalize this and have people, volunteers, go through, for instance, the agenda links or the video links, make sure that they are valid, which ones are missing. We had canceled meetings, for instance, where I know in my heart of hearts that we had an agenda packet prepared for it. It wasn't canceled until that day, so it was already sent out. Well, what to do, there's valuable information in there, financial reports, pretty pictures from the project status, that if we can get that, find that, and then put it back onto the website, it would be helpful. But also on going through our minutes in particular. We're not talking about for the past year or 2 years, we're talking about a lot of minutes. How many of them are draft minutes? How many of them are finalized? If they're draft minutes, we gotta figure out what it's gonna take for us to finalize them. We need to. This good enough for government work stuff should not apply to us. We need to be able to get things done, but I don't want to try to throw that on one person. We want to be able to compartmentalize it, have one person volunteer to go through this part of it, that another person volunteering to do that. Can't really do that with just a couple of people here right now to get pigeonhole people to volunteer, but we will be bringing this back up and I'll be reaching out to people. But you specifically asked if we put this on the agenda. Did you have something in particular that you wanted to add?
Well, yeah, I think we can break it into two kind of scopes of work. One is kind of any type of redesign, or, you know, you call it an accessibility, upgrade. Just, you know, with the goal of always making it, you know, accessible and easy to navigate, and not too loaded down with content, is one thing. And then kind of making sure all the content is there is another thing. And so, I would like to, I mean, what I think I heard you say, Don, is kind of a bottom-up approach to kind of think about, like, look at what's missing and what's needed. I would also like the top-down approach to understand what the process looks like to make changes to the website. And then maybe we can have a agreed upon timeline that's realistic for everybody, to be able to start working on it and then understand the process and then come back and have the districts upload or upgrade or make changes, whether it's design or content.
Now, correct me if I'm misunderstanding that, but I don't believe that the district would object to anything that we really ask on there as long as it's reasonable. As far as content and change on there. They just don't want us doing it. They don't want to give us the keys to the kingdom.
Wasn't there an upgrade to the website?
Yeah,
Is it
so
still a
I'm
process?
wondering, I know, go ahead.
Okay, so I mean, because I knew this was on the agenda, I did talk to communications for an update on the website redesign, because as Melissa stated to Dawn, right now, no one in the district, it's not just us and facilities, but across the board, nobody beyond the communications department is able to change the website because we are in this transition between our old website and our new website. And so the information that I got from communications is this summer we will be making that transition, and the hope is to have the new website ready for the fall. And so I did request that the communications department come to a CBOC meeting. They were looking at the upcoming dates to see when they could fit it in, but thought it would be more useful after we transition to the new website than before that has occurred. So,
Well, I'm sorry, at the very beginning of our next meeting in June, Michelle Forrest is going to be here too.
oh, good.
As it-
I didn't hear we got confirmed for June.
No, yeah, she confirmed that 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Excellent.
Yes, yeah. And so we could just add that as an additional item to throw at her.
So there's a brand new district website that's gonna be rolled out.
Yes.
And as a part of that, there'll be a CBOC sub-site
Yes.
page, whatever,
I just don't want the committee to miss the boat on being able to
weigh in.
weigh in. I mean, maybe it makes sense to wait to see what we can work with. If that makes sense, then let's
I'm
do
afraid
it.
we kind of missed the pre-boat. So if we were doing the
Pre-boat.
pre-boat, that should have been done last fall. And that's when like all the districts' websites were being asked to be cleaned up and redesigned. I think we're now at the point where the redesign's already occurring in the back end. So
Okay,
the
now,
CBOC website is gonna be created the way it is, and then I think it's time then there's opportunity there to clean up and do additional changes.
Okay.
I'm not trying to throw this in your lap, but you were chair back in September. Surely you got the memo inviting you to weigh in on this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
was there an ask back then, or what?
No,
I'm sure.
I'm sure there wasn't.
Well,
But it
we
sounds
had
like-
discussions on website,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
there were a lot of other initiatives in the works at the
There
time.
was a
and-
lot going on.
One thing that I would like to get the blessing of the people here, for me to work up a photograph to replace the Pinole Valley High School photograph that we've got at the top. And it's kind of out of date. I mean, we cut the ribbon on that, what, 7 years ago, 8 years ago? But I was gonna suggest that we just have something on Kennedy High School and Richmond High School combined on there.
Mhm.
Because those are the projects for the next 3 or 4 years.
Don't forget speech.
Well, you don't wanna make the individual pictures so small.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, but having a library of photos on our website would be nice too.
Well, and I think that's great if comms is gonna come to the next meeting, so I think kind of knowing that, preparing like, how do we identify a dead link to be updated, right? What is the process for that? We would like to have a rotating photo, like the things
wish
that
list.
you would like it to be, that's gonna be the team that's gonna be able to say, here's how we do it, because we don't know. And so I think it's a great opportunity if they're coming to the meeting to really think about, asking those kinds of things so that can really go into, and the exact timing on it, they would know more too, but I think that's the opportunity. It's not often that we have other departments that come, so that's great that she's gonna
We should
come.
make sure Tatiana knows, or is reminded of the website being an agenda item for next.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Cause I think she's gonna.
I reach
be an
out.
asset.
Yes, it'd be great. My experience in asking the district to amend something that's on the website. I mean, for instance, just recently, had to replace a set of, an agenda packet for the joint meeting with our agenda packet as opposed to a link to the district's. Anyway, the process I just sent an email and it was taken care of.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so what, it wasn't, I mean, of course, it had to go through channels, but it's still, it was done.
Yeah.
It wasn't a difficult process, so there's cooperation there. So, anyway, last time, because we're out of time, actually, future agenda items, I've already got on there.
I feel like we talked about several tonight.
Well, like, sorry, I've only got one that I've really talked about, the, changing the CBOC meeting night dates.
Oh, yeah.
What was another one?
Well, we talked about the website, right, which I guess will be a future agenda item for the next meeting.
Yep.
Yeah,
We talked about, the suggested, language, I guess, to forward to the board for, recruiting. Membership for the process for CBOC membership. I don't know if that
Well-
needs to be an agenda item. I mean, I guess that's a running agenda item, maybe?
well, we,
Yeah, no,
I think
let's
we
put it
already
on the
kind of
agenda.
decided on that. Sorry, what?
Oh, we decided on?
I'm sorry, on amending the process.
I didn't think we didn't.
Yeah, we talked about different things, let's put it on paper and then approve it.
Oh, okay, well, you know, that, I've got a problem with
Yeah,
And then there was one other one, I don't know.
Well, I'll be going over the whole tape again anyway, but,
Some of the notes that I wrote down, I mean, there's definitely action items that we're taking away, but, we're gonna be bringing forward the KPI report. We're gonna be bringing forward the org chart at the next meeting. I wonder if to support the conversation about the process, if we could pull up the board policy and make the recommendations of the changes to make to the board policy to support the recommendations to the change in the process.
I'm sorry, the board policy doesn't want to go into much detail about the process on there.
Okay, so then maybe that's not helpful. I make
Yeah,
that
I
as
mean-
a note to myself, because I do think, right, if we make something better, how do we make sure it just stays better?
Oh, agree.
it might,
Yeah.
we should review that, because I think there's some mention of the process in the.
Well, there is, but not to the detail about timing, for instance.
Oh, yeah, not that, no,
Yeah.
but, I think there should be a review, because there could be some alignment
Yeah.
issues.
And I also made a note, and this maybe it doesn't go here, but I'm pretty sure we have the agenda packets for the meetings that were canceled, and so I'm gonna mention that tomorrow so that we can get those posted, which will take time, but I'm sure we have them.
That's what my thought was as
Yeah,
well.
and so I wrote those as takeaways for me,
I will,
and then also getting the meeting scheduled.
I will send you an email listing the dates, which will make things a little easier.
Mhm. Yeah, that would be great.
I don't want you to have, or any of your staff to have to go through and redo what I've already done.
Yeah, no, that would be great. So that's what I have.
And even before I was gonna waste their time, since I've been sent emails with the agenda packets, I just need to go back on that. Depending upon which laptop or desktop computer, different timeframes about when things were added. But I've got my old laptop is sitting on my floor, and I just gotta get it recharged again, and I'm sure that I'll be able to pull up a lot of those items on there.
We're happy to do that.
What, recharge my laptop?
If you have the date,
Yes.
we'll get the packet.
Yeah, okay,
I have one more item,
yes, sir.
and I have to preface this by saying it's not a joke. I'd like to agendize, Miss Andrea Landine and her cello.
For what? I mean, no, I'm asking for what?
Playing
You
either to open or close a CBOC meeting. Put it on there.
All right.
We're gonna have a
Okay.
boosted membership, like.
That's what I was gonna say, we should,
Say,
Let's do everything we can.
You mentioned that because you saw her email, I will be reviewing the tape at a later date, and you want to say, look what I've done for you. You know, me and you were simpatico.
And I think last meeting she said, I didn't play because it's not agendized, so.
Oh,
now
okay.
it is.
I'll go back, I'll find that and throw it in her face, but no, I'll put it on here.
Hey, my favorite part of the board meetings are the street performances, so maybe we will increase membership if we have performances.
We're done?
Do we have nothing
Can
else?
we adjourn?
We are adjourned at 8:46 PM.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Our next meeting is on June 16th.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you, everyone.
Oh, yeah.